Welcome back to the All About Ability Football show, and the international break is over. Thank God for that. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the international break this time around really went on forever. But luckily, we've got a lot of football ahead of us to talk about, so let's dive into it. We have Celtic came back and showed, I felt, some clear improvement from the St Johnstone game at home where we finished 0-0. Half time it's 0-0, but it seemed like we really upped it in the second half. From what I'm seeing from the goals and hearing, I had some powers of mind. I didn't actually get to watch the game, so I'll hold my hands up on that. But what I'll say is I had some powers of mind saying that he did seem to bring back the inverted fullbacks for that, which was exciting to hear in terms of breaking down Dundee, and I hope that's kind of something that we see more often. Kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that before we go into the European football, but have you got any thoughts on that, Paul? Because you might have seen the game more than
I watched the game. Sometimes football's a bit white noisy for me, so I didn't notice that we did the inverted fullbacks. But if that's what happened, amazing, because if we can switch between the two, they're two completely different styles of play. So if we could really sort of like confuse teams. We looked way better. I think what I was thinking there when you were talking is, are we just going to accept the fact that we now play a slower build-up? Are we going to stop craving the high-intensity, high-paced Ange Postecoglou style football and just accept the fact that we now have Brendan Rodgers as our manager and things are just going to be a wee bit slower building up, because that's his philosophy, is this sort of patient build-up play when you're on the ball, move it side to side, wait for teams to open up and then you punish them. But marked improvement. And a shout out to Liam Scales, because, mate, that guy's looking comfortable and he's looking like no matter who comes back, whether it be Nabrowski, Cameron Carter-Vickers, they're going to need to take the jersey off that guy. We'd said in the last episode of the football show, I hope that he doesn't just instantly, just as soon as somebody's fit, just put them straight back into the team. But he played Liam Scales against Dundee alongside... What's the guy that we signed for Liverpool? Phillips, who had to go off at half time because he rolled his ankle. But Liam Scales is looking like like he's played at that centre back position for a couple of seasons. He's looking really assured. It looks like he's had a lot of confidence, and that carried on into the Champions League game against Feyenoord, which we're going to touch on later. But we looked, we could have beat Dundee 6-0. I think this is a similar problem that we actually had under Postecoglou in Europe. We're not being clinical enough with our chances, and that includes Kyogo. So I reckon we get a bit more clinical. Again, we accept the fact that Rodgers is now the coach and it's no Ange anymore, and I think we're all good, mate. I think there's way more to come for this Celtic team. We're still not full strength, but things are looking better.
I'm right there with you on it, mate. And see the point about the style of play and accepting that sort of slower build-up. For me, at the end of the day, everyone talks about styles of play and stuff like that. And yes, was Ange's style a bit more enjoyable to watch? There's no real denying that, because that fast tempo that was brought. But he's winning football matches, you know what I mean? And that's what it comes down to. Like, the most important thing for us, really, when you think about it, and every football fan, regardless of what they say, is you want to win the football match. Like, if every game's fantastic but you lose them all 4-3, that manager's getting sacked. You know what I mean? It's like, so I think the acceptance comes with results. And we've our biggest game of the season so far, we've got Ibrox to win. You know what I mean? We look like we're going to do, but at the end of the day, Rodgers is a winning type of manager. He knows how to win at this level. And if we end the season champions, nobody's going to be like, yeah, but we didn't beat enough teams 5-6 now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to care about that, mate. Everybody's going to care about the end result. Because if he plays the same style as Ange, but Rangers win the league, nobody's going to be saying, oh, I'm glad, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, 100% agree. Results dictate the attitude. I think that what I do remember about the game and what I did notice when I was watching it is is that Rio Hatate is just a linchpin in this Celtic team. We looked way different when he came on. I don't know much about David Turnbull, but I'm starting to form the opinion that he's not good enough to play for Celtic. When you've got Callum McGregor and Matt O'Reilly, who are both excellent football players next to you. Matt O'Reilly had another great game against Dundee. He stands out as, that expression of like, you're only as good as your weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
If we're at full strength, say, a full strength starting 11, we've got Carter Vickers and Scales, say at centre half, we've got Johnson back, which we have, Taylor, and then we've got McGregor and O'Reilly. I don't see David Turnbull challenging any of that midfield three. I think for me, it has to be Rio Hatate. We're going to talk about Tuesday night, I'm sure, in due course. But against Dundee on Sunday, when he came off the bench, everything changed. The speed at which we got through the midfield to the front three was marked, way improved, and just the accuracy on his pass. Like, I think for me, David Turnbull looks like he needs more time on the ball. He's got the turning circle with an Arctic lorry. So when he's getting the ball for the centre half and midfield and his backs to the opposition goal, Rio Hatate can just sort of spin and he's like there and he's got a bit of room and he seems to have a lot of time, whereas David Turnbull seems to not be able to do that and he needs more time in the ball, and I don't think you get that at Celtic. It's been said so many times with so many people, every team that we play is a cup final and they're going to be right up your arse as soon as you get the ball, and I just don't think that he's the man. Maybe you could be like, yeah, he's still a young guy, but at the same time, when he's not in that team, we look different, especially when it's Rio Hatate that's taking his place. So unfortunately for me, David Turnbull, we either develop him or we let him go, and maybe somewhere at Motherwell's the guy's level.
I mean, I think, okay, so I've heard that from a lot of...
See your face, like, oh.
I wouldn't say Motherwell's
SPFL, top six.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? I'm not saying that as a way to like stick the boot into the guy, but he did really well at that club and he's came to Celtic and he's not really done what we thought he was going to do. I don't know if whether or not that year out where he'd done his knees took his confidence or whatever like that, but he's just not the guy that I thought that we were signing. And when we've got better there, and it looks like Home is also a better football player, I don't see him, and that's me being compassionate towards a guy like David Turnbull. Don't do what Derek Riordan did. Don't do what multiple young Scottish prospects have done at Celtic, where you come, you realise you're not up to the level and you stay there for 4 or 5 years. Like, go on and get on a park and play football, because he's undoubtedly a good football player. I just don't see him being at that standard that Celtic are looking for, especially in the Champions League, but it even seems at the SPFL level.
Look, I totally get what you're saying, and I've seen this, what you're saying about Hatate in the Dundee game. Everybody seems to be saying that, and I do agree. But I also just can't help but feel bad for the guy, because when Ange first came in, that first half of that season, we needed David Turnbull, and the guy did deliver. Like, I know that we were 6 points behind him and all that, but if we didn't have him at that point, we would not have won that league that season. People seem to forget that first half of that season where he was playing virtually every game, and he got injured by putting, by just overplaying all the time for us.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of,
yes. And I've got that same sentiment towards Anthony Ralston, but I also don't want to see him starting over Alistair Johnston, because he's not in the same league as the guy. So I get that, but we are at, especially when you're playing Champions League football, you're at the elite level, and just because you've had a guy in your squad that's done a job when you've needed him, well, that's what he's there to do. And by the way, mate, he gets paid handsomely for that as well, right? So it's his job to come in and fill the gaps, and he did that at that first 6 months under Ange. And I really did, and I like him. This is the thing. I find it hard to really talk shit about David Turnbull, because I really like him, and I really feel bad about the way that we signed him, noticed he'd an injury, he had to go and get surgery, and I want this guy to succeed at Celtic badly. I just don't see it happening, unfortunately.
But you made a really good point about it, where it's like, I don't think it's necessarily about his level as much as it is about playing for a club like Celtic.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that the expectation in every single game is so high. And like, for example, you're talking about him being like, top 6 Premiership team. What I would say is, I reckon he could probably go to a high level Championship team in England and do really well, because he's going to have the same quality but have a lot more space and time. You don't get, it's not so much about, I don't think it's as much about the level as it is about the fact that, like you say, every game for the teams we play in the league is like a cup final, so they are like, you're not going to get the room to turn. Whereas if he plays for a team, in the Championship, like a Middlesbrough or something like that, they're not going to be on his arse all the time, so he might be able to actually do the things that he wants to do.
Yeah, you're spot on, mate. Like, and you forget that, didn't you? And I definitely forget that there's something very different about playing for Celtic and Rangers than what it is for playing almost any other team in the world. See, to prove the point of what I'm talking about, there was a moment in Saturday where he picked up the ball, maybe about 4 or 5 yards off of the centre spot, and by the time he got turned, it was almost out at the touchline. It was like such a long way round to get himself turned and facing towards goal. And like we're saying, I think at a team like Celtic, with the expectation and the pressure, and with the way that the oppositions generally line up against you, maybe a bit different when we play Rangers, maybe a bit different when we play in Europe, you don't get that time. There's somebody on you. And I like the guy, but I don't know, man. I just don't see it happening for him.
I'm right there with you, and it's like, it then becomes a question of whether he's happy to sit on the bench or not. You know what I mean? But ultimately, that's his decision.
Yeah, I
think that Hatate has shown that he's just that level above. But speaking of Hatate, let's move on to the Champions League game, right?
Can I ask you, what did you think about him dropping Yang?
I thought it was unnecessary. I don't really know, because, so here's the thing, we've got all these new wingers. I have no doubt that a guy like Palma, is that who you pronounce his name, hopefully? I have no doubt that he'll come good. But what was surprising to me the most, taking their ability away, was that Yang is now match sharp, he's match fit, he's ready to go. Play him. What are you not playing him for?
Yeah, I would like to hear some sort of, if we could, let's get Brendan into the studio and something. But I would like to hear why that happened. I mean, if it's been the case, which I suspect, the guy's great in training. The guy's had an amazing, couple of weeks in training. He's showing stuff, and Rodgers is like, let's get this guy in. Like, he's got some quality. I think that's a big mistake, based on what you just said there. He clearly lacked match sharpness, and for what I've seen for Yang, I'm loving it. So other than potentially maybe like the final ball, which comes with a bit of time and like that sort of sharpness, I've been loving what I've seen for Yang. Can clearly get by a player, confident with the ball at his feet, decent pass on him. I felt like it was a weird choice to throw Parma in to a Champions League game for his debut.
Away to the Dutch champions as well. You're like, what are you playing at with that? Because the thing is, you're watching the game and see these, one thing that the game against Feyenoord really shows you is the Champions League games are such fine margins, man. They really are fine margins, in the sense that there was a 2 or 3 times I can remember where Palma is one-on-one with the fullback, and there's actually been a couple of chances that have been created, and then his final thing that he does just was well off it. It was well off it. And you're like, if that is, you can't help but think, if that's Yang, he's a bit more sharp. He's just that a second or two quicker because he's fully fit. Do you know what I mean? And you go, why are you throwing in a guy at this level, at this pace of a game, away from home, when you don't need to? Because even if, like you say, he's looked at him in training, he's got that bit of quality, he's shown that bit of quality, bring him on with half an hour to go. You don't start the guy that's fit and bring on him later on.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, it's another case of, I feel like Rodgers overthought that one and was like, if I throw him in his class, that'll be a masterstroke for me. But it's like, mate, hello, it's not about you. Like, can we just get the result here?
Yeah.
Because you're watching that game and you're just like, man, I can't help but feel frustrated about the business that we've done this summer, and a lot because I know that's what we always do when we lose a game and you're right, but you can't tell me that that's pot one away from home, and we could have and probably should have got a point for that game. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think for the first 40, I think for the first 45 minutes we were actually the better team.
And how many times on this podcast have you spoke about the fact that we needed to sign a bloody goalkeeper, man? Like,
we'll get to we'll talk about their goal in a second. Rio Hatate looked a yard off it.
Oh, so far off it, mate.
So it's really interesting, isn't it, that he comes on in the Saturday against Dundee and you're like, Rio's back. Wow, and he changed the game. But then he starts against Feyenoord and it's that step up in pace. Like, all the way through the build-up, all the press conferences, they're asking, what's the difference? What's the difference? And I agree with this analysis that the difference between Champions League football and league football, especially when it comes to Scottish football or maybe like the lesser, recognised European leagues, as much as Scottish Rangers and Celtic are up there, the actual league itself is kind of shat on by people, is the pace that the game is played at. And for the first half hour, it looked like the game passed them by.
It was incredibly frustrating because there was a lot of times where he actually did have the freedom of the park a bit for a bit there. Feyenoord, the first half hour, looked right off it. They looked right off it. And there was a couple of times that really sprang to my mind of, there's one time he's running through it. He's kind of like, the defence is in front of him, but he's got like loads of space at the edge of the, like pretty much at the edge of the box, and you're thinking, Rio Hatate fully fit, smashes that into the top corner, like, or at least has a shot where you go, what a shot. But it was like a back pass to the keeper.
Yep, straight down the keeper's throat. He had a pass left and right
and
as well.
And you have David Timbo lovers out there being like, here, smash that.
He would have got to the position or whatever like that. Again, it comes back to exactly what you were saying, like the fine margins. Maybe Turnbull was the right decision for that game against Feyenoord. Do you know? Maybe Yang was the right decision, but we're only looking at that with the sort of 2020 advantage of hindsight. But when I seen the team outside of the back four, which I think is a forced hand, it's not the Rio Hatate. That was at half time. I was like, oh fuck, like maybe not. But that Yang Palmer, and I think he played because he ended up playing Maida on the right hand side and Palmer on the left hand side. So you're asking Dyson Maida to play on the other side that he's not used to playing. I just felt like that was a bad choice.
Well, see, ultimately, mate, see if the manager's going to do that. If he's going to make that call, Palmer needs to do something. He needs to do something to justify that. If you're the manager, you get paid all this money to be the manager. If you're going to make that call, it's because you need to know this guy is going to do something. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what when you make that decision, you're banking on the fact that he's going to do something in the game to change it. And he didn't. And that's not really on him, but what I'm saying is that, like, the only way that decision is justified is if we can sit and say, well, he scored this or he did that, but he didn't. So then you go, so then as his fans, I have the right to go, that was the wrong call. You took a guy that was in good form, fully fit, out of the team for no real reason, and it also made the other winger weaker because you put him on his least favourite side. So, ultimately it was the wrong call. And you look at the, what we're saying about Hatate, that one where he actually presses and wins it back and then doesn't roll in Kyogo. Oh man, I was screaming at the telly with that because it was like he wins it back and Kyogo's right next to him and literally, if he just slides him in with like one touch, Kyogo's right through and goal one with the keeper. And when he didn't do that, I was just like, there was things that Hatate fully fit would have done that he didn't do in that game. But what I will say, we're going to go into, you talked a bit about Scales once again, really solid.
Yeah, spot
on the money. Fair play to the guy. I love what I'm seeing for Scales in there, man. See the fight that he's got. He's just like, I'm a Celtic fan and I tried to play for Celtic and I refuse to give up this shot, man. And I'm like, I love stuff like that, man. Like, I mean, honestly, I'm sounding like Kevin Keegan, but I love it. I love it.
and I'm right there with you, mate. Like, I am right there with you. I'm loving what I'm just. There's many things in football, right, that can frustrate a supporter or like a fan watching it, and no matter what the ability is of an individual, as long as they put the effort in, I don't mind. If they're picked to go in that park, that's not their fault that their ability or their level isn't there. But if they go out and they apply themselves, that's all that you can really ask for. He is given 110% right now for Celtic, and like I'm excited to see if him and Carter Vickers can form a partnership.
I know, and you would, if he keeps going the way he is, there's no reason why that can't be the partnership going forward. So going on to the goals a wee bit, so we talked about some individual performances there, but going on to the goals specifically, the free kick, do you know what, man? See, as soon as they got that in half time, right on half time, I'm looking at it, I'm sitting watching it, and I'm going, they're scoring this, man.
Well, first of all, it shouldn't have stood.
Right.
Because the rule is that the attackers need to be at least a metre away from the wall, and they've got players in the wall.
Right.
So straight off the bat, it shouldn't have, like, I've just, because I was looking at this and I seen somebody say it on Twitter, and the reason that I'm, I'm sure I'm on camera, I'm looking at my phone is because I'm wanting to see where the wall is. There is a Feyenoord player in the wall, so it shouldn't have been a goal straight off the bat, right? So I googled, so I've just looked at it. It's 100%, and here is, if the free kick is taken within the kicking team's penalty area, opponents must be outside the penalty area. Okay, right? So that's, if your goalkeeper's taking a free kick for a foul in the box, and you're the defending team, they need to be outside the area. If the defending team forms a wall of 3 or more players, all attacking players must be at least 1 metre away. So the rule is you're not allowed to get within a metre radius of the defending team's wall, and they had 2 players actually in the wall. So I think, like, on a technicality, right, it shouldn't have stood. Putting that to one side, there was 2 mammoth errors, mega errors for me. What is Kyogo doing at the end, one of the bookends of a wall? If you want to stick him in the middle of the wall to make up the numbers, that's fine. Why is he on the end, especially the end that the guy was clearly trying to go over? He's the smallest guy in the park. Why have you got him there? And then 2, Joe Hart starting position and his ability to go over to that left-hand side of his goal, which again was clearly where the guy was going to put the ball, was just unforgivable, really. So they two errors. I had my sort of thoughts on it, and I think, like, even at half time of the game, I turned around to Matt and I was like, listen, these might be the types of things that get shored up as the team get used to what Rodgers is expecting for them, as far as like set pieces and corners and free kicks and blah blah blah. But I just can't get my head round why they put Kyogo on the end of that wall, and I can't get my head round why Joe Hart started so far over to that right hand side of his goal. It makes it so difficult for him. Also, what made it really difficult for him is the ball bounced. So, it's hard to sort of like see the trajectory of the bounce coming back up, and it did sort of go over his hand and into the back of the net. But like you said earlier, how many times are we going to go through a transfer window and need a vital player such as a central defender, a striker, a goalkeeper, not get it, and then within 4 or 5 games be like, we're being punished for this again?
It's so constant, and it's just so frustrating because those errors they are making, I can accept the fact if we go out in a Champions League game and see if like Atletico Madrid having this, you go, well, of course they did. Do you know what I mean? But when it's things like that, where it comes into organisation of a wall, and then like you say, it's so obvious where the guy's going with it, so obvious where he's putting it, and Hart is so far over to one side. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you can say anything about the bounce or whatever, but like, you should be knowing that there's no chance that guy's putting that at your side. How are you not reading that before the shot's even taken? Like, go a couple of yards to that side you know, because even if he puts it your side, you're still close enough to get it. So there's a lot of things about the goalkeeper very frustrating. The goal itself was very preventable, and you don't have to be conceding that at that level. It was, and also you just kind of feel that if we go in at half time, 0-0, Feyenoord didn't look like they were really creating that much.
It really gave them a massive boost, and then we also looked really flat when we came out for that second half, which is understandable. Like, to go back to what I was saying about it shouldn't have stood, I think it's right, as you know, we're making content around football, and I think it's right to highlight that, but I think it's also right for us to go, let's not take away our side of it. Soft free kick given, Wall not in the right position, goalkeeper not in the right position, everything very preventable, just exactly like you said. How did you feel about Lagerbielke's, I said his name right, chef's kiss, Lagerbielke's sending off penalty?
As soon as he got booked, I knew that was going to happen. Like, see, when I was watching, honestly, as soon as he got booked in the first half, right? And I was like, at half time, somebody in our team, in our coaching team, needs to pull this guy aside and be like, here, mate, don't get sent off. Like, focus on the fact that you cannot dive in, you cannot make any silly mistakes. You are now no room for error. Like, we are not going to get back in this game if you get sent off. I feel like if somebody, I don't know, I'm not in the dressing room, somebody might have done that, but I doubt it, right? And I feel like somebody needs to get right in that guy's face and be like, hey, you, no more mistakes, you get no more room for error, don't dive in, stay strong, stay up, no grabbing of the shirts and all that, because I was moving about a bit, so I didn't quite see what happened with the second booking the penalty, which is poor for me doing that as content. But what I'll say is that you just got the feeling this guy is doing well, but he just there's no other way for him to put it than he comes across like a bit of an idiot sometimes. Really naive, really naive.
Yeah, he's super young, and that night, and I mean, the amount of times that I've had conversations with people where I'm like, centre halves do need to be 25 and up for me, and at a Champions League level, there are people that are like, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this guy? Like, I think to have that maturity, and you know, especially like if you're standing next to another young guy in Scales, I think you've used the absolute perfect word for his performance. It was naive. Now, you're saying you didn't see it. He tried to put his arm across the guy's body. Didn't he elbow him? He didn't. No, the guy did grab his face and his throat and rolled about. And when the penalty get given, he was jumping up, and you know, so it was a bit of sportsmanship, a bit of gamesmanship about it. But on the flip side, he gave the referee a decision to make. VAR looked at it and didn't overturn it. I think in the modern game, it is a foul, what he did. I think it is a penalty, and I think ultimately it is a booking, because it was almost like shades of Jozo at Ibrox, where he doesn't elbow Morelos in the face. It's not an intentional, whack to the face. It's a natural body movement to put your arm out and put it across the attacker, just like happens all over the field. But I think like he mistimed it. The guy getting in front of him, he ended up sort of hitting him. And for me, I think I hate to say it, I think the right decision was made. Joe Hart saved the penalty, and we have 2 disallowed goals, 2 red cards, and a penalty save. So, the second goal was coming. Yeah. It was coming. And I don't think there was anything that we could really do at that point when we're down to 9 men. On the home sending off, I don't think that's a straight red card for me. He pulls out of the tackle. Yep, his studs are showing. Yes, his foot's high because of the way that his legs sort of swung up. But he tried to pull out. I don't think it was dangerous what he did. And I think that's a harsh one. I think that's a yellow card and a free kick. But, I'm no referee, so... No,
I take your point, and I've heard a lot of people say that the Lagerbielke penalty sending off was somewhat harsh, but it comes back to what we said about the VAR decision for Rangers goal Ibrox, about how maybe even 5 years ago that wouldn't have been a yellow card and a send off and a penalty, but the game is those kind of things happening, especially in your box. 9 times out of 10 the attacker's going to get that decision, and that just came from that defender being young and naive and thinking they could get away with it. And you don't. The bottom line is, so, like, I just feel like somebody in our coaching team, whoever it may be, should have pulled him aside at half time and been like, hey, let's calm you down.
Yeah, you know? I think we're expecting, for me, if I'm looking about that team, let's say, you know, the guys that are off the park, Joe Hart. Like, the goalkeeper for me should be conducting the defence. They should be the organiser. Like, I like to see when there's set pieces that the goalkeeper's like, fuck it. You know, like, goalkeepers, especially at Celtic and Rangers, they don't have a lot to do in a game. So if they can make it part of their game that they make sure that the organisation of the defence is a wee bit better, especially when your two starting centre halves are nowhere near the team and they're both injured or whatever like that, I would be looking to Joe Hart to be pulling that young guy aside and going, listen, I've been here many times before with loads of centre halves. You're in danger. European football, Callum McGregor said it in the post-match interview, you don't get away with them in Champions League. So either a McGregor or a Hart, a senior player to take that leadership, have that bit about them, that mindfulness to go into the dressing room. Maybe even as they're coming out the dressing room, about to go back on the park, going, listen, make sure you don't get a second booting. Because not only are you going to leave us with 9 men away to the Dutch champions, you're not going to play the next Champions League game at home.
Well, that's it, exactly. And with the defensive situation we've got right now, that's a big problem for us now. Yeah. But what's really disappointing for me is the fact that Hart, that's one of the things that Hart brings to it, that experience that he's got. You know, when everyone talks about the pluses of Joe Hart, we talk about the level he's played at and the experience he has. So you're kind of hoping that guy is going to be like talking to the, you know, young defender that's not got a lot of experience, saying some words of wisdom to get him back on focused on the game and realise, like, you can't make I think it would have been really simple for somebody to be like, no contact with anyone, like no pulling, no pulling of the shots in that. You need to be really strict with yourself. Hold your position. You know, don't give the referee a decision to make. Is something that could have been very easy for any of them to say, and that's disappointing that we didn't do that. Yeah. What I will say in terms of the game overall, I feel like in terms of the home red card, I would say you're probably right, but I think it's one of those situations where if it's not going for you, it's not going for you. Yeah. And, you know, basically everything that could have went wrong for us did go wrong. What's positive for me is that with that said, usually when you're saying that, you're going, and then we lost 7-0 or something like that. Yep. Right? The team showed good, a good mentality to not lose more than they lost after they went down to 9 men. I thought that was a good sign. Keep in mind, this is away from home at pot 1 here. Do you know what I mean? They're supposed to be, I know that the pots are dictated and certain things, but at the end of the day, they're pot 1 and we're away from home. On paper, it's supposed to be one of the most, if not the most difficult game of the group. So, I mean, you could argue Atletico and Lazio are obviously really good teams. But my point is that we had a lot of bad luck and a lot of misfortune there. And we didn't let the game, it didn't get embarrassing. 2-0 with 9 men isn't embarrassing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So fair play to them for that. I agree. And when you consider that we conceded 1-0 for a direct free kick set piece, we didn't go 2-0 down until we were at 9 men. It's a weird sort of paradox that happened where I've been saying to everybody, I'm actually feeling really positive about the game on Tuesday night. If let's just say Feyenoord were that's about as good as they've got, I think we can beat them at Parkhead. Absolutely no doubt about that. We beat Lazio home and away in 2019. And the game between Lazio, I can't remember what did that finish. Away it was a 1-1. So if we can match Lazio, we can match Atletico Madrid. I'm confident that we can get European football after Christmas. But I'm feeling positive about a 2-0 defeat, which isn't normal. But again, it was the style of it and the things that went against us. Nothing went our way in Tuesday night. So they didn't actually carve us open a lot, which was positive to see. That's what you're saying. Like the first goal comes from a free kick and stuff like that. It could have got a lot worse. And I think that, like, to be at your point, I was very encouraged by what I've seen in terms of us at that level. When you consider the fact that there's no other way of putting it. Carl Vickers is a big part of this team we've got, and he's missing. And there's a lot of players we've got like Hatate and that aren't at full fitness, you know. So another couple of weeks training, those chances that Hatate has, maybe capitalises on them a bit more, makes his decision making a bit sharper. You know, Palma gets a few more weeks training, he's a bit sharper as well. There's a lot of positives to take from it, and I think that we have, you know, and ultimately, mate, whether we progress or we don't isn't going to be defined by our away games. You know,
agreed.
The home games are the games that we want to be winning to progress, and I don't think, if we're being honest with ourselves, we thought that we'd be going to Feyenoord and would get a result. So to be disappointed by that, I think actually shows a good level from us, you know?
Agreed.
So there's a lot of good things to take from that. And what I kind of wanted to mention as well, it's been interesting to see before the last podcast we done, we were talking about how Bale needs to come back and get a couple of results, and he's managed to get a couple of big results in Europe and away from home domestically. So it'll be interesting to see if they start kind of getting a bit of a rhythm going as well.
Building a bit of momentum and seeing what happens over the next sort of few weeks.
Exactly. But I didn't want to, I do feel like we should mention and should just briefly speak about what Rodgers said at the press conference after the Champions League game. And because it's been doing the rounds, I thought it was very interesting. He was directly asked if he was happy with the business that the club done during the summer, transfer-wise, and he flat out said no. But then he goes on to say, well, you know, every manager, every team, you shouldn't be happy because you should always look to improving. So he said no, and then he tried to kind of politicise it, right?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, he was asked a direct question, and he gave a very direct answer, saying no to that.
Yep. I think there's maybe like two ways of looking at this, right? You can say the club did everything that I think that they could have done to get the quality that we need to compete at this level and just couldn't get it. So I'm happy with the way that we conducted our business, but I'm not happy with the end result. I think either way, that does not fill the new guys with much confidence about their manager coming out and going like, they've just signed me someone he's not happy about the overall. But that's interesting. I missed that. I'm not a fan of that. What he said. And that's a bit disappointing, but also if that's how he feels, I would rather that he just said that rather than, you know, maybe giving a sort of platitude to keep people happy. I mean, I think that's an important, like everything you said there's spot on there, mate, but the last thing there, I think spot on in the sense of like, well, I'm happy to hear Rodgers being honest, right? Because we have some trust issues with this guy, right? So at least he's not trying to, you know, pull the wool over anyone. He's not happy with it, and I appreciate that honesty to an extent. What I will say is, it's not what the team needs right now. We get a bunch of new players come in and still try to gel in. I don't know if the manager coming out saying he wasn't happy with the business we've done is great for the team, but what he says to the media and what he says in the dressing room can be two totally different things. We don't know what he's saying in the dressing room. He may have told them that he would say that. He may not told them directly about that particular question, but he might be telling them things that we don't know about. Though that's a fact of them, you know, that's a thing that we need to consider there. Also, for me, there's a positive way of looking at this, which I'm going to take, which is there's a chance that he's saying that because he knows that there's business to get done in January, and that they're working on that, and they're going to, and he's been given reassurances of that. But also, he might know that how important he is to the club right now, and how important the boards have told him he is to the club right now. So when he comes out and says no, what he's trying to say to the board is, I want this done in January. I want this guy and this guy and this guy brought in January. So there could be a bunch of political things going on there that we don't know about. Yeah, And he is definitely a politician of a football manager. So I would say that everything's very deliberate. I don't think anything's done by accident. He doesn't seem to be the type of person that would open his mouth and let his belly rumble in a press conference and then be like, oh God.
So I'm choosing to believe there's a positive reason that he's done this, right?
Yeah.
There might not be. But at the end of the day, the guy's just signed a 3-year deal. He's not going anywhere anytime, in the very soon or anything like that. So I don't believe that he says that unless conversations been had in the background.
I severely hope so.
I severely hope so too. And on that really concerning note, I really enjoyed these football chats with you, mate, and it's so easy, and I just find it really enjoyable just talking about football. So we're going to keep doing that. We're going to bring back the vlogs as well. That's something I'd like to do. We did that once and it was a lot of fun. And so there's going to be more football content, more podcast content, just more content in general. And I'm going to try really hard to be as consistent as I can be. And obviously Paul has played a big part in that as well.